All right, guys, welcome back to the Guest List podcast. My guest right here is a first timer driving a car during an interview. I love it. She's very committed, as you could tell that she's very dedicated to people and humanity, and she's the founder of Caridad, which has appeared many times in the news, and it's basically a full service street outreach agency. So I'll let her do some explanation during this conversation, but in short, that's what it is. Thank you, Merideth, for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jake. And I want to make a note to anyone listening that I am using a hands-free device. So I am safely talking right now.
No, that like I said in the pre-conversation, I appreciate you for accommodating me. I know you're a very busy person, and I know it's hot out there, so you could even be a little constrained physically and mentally as well. So,
yeah, this is a step up. I'm used to being outside, so I'm in the AC, so this is delightful. So thank you, Jake.
I appreciate it. So let's just start off with a little bit of context on who Merideth Spriggs is. So can you just give us, just a few minute quick description of how you describe yourself?
Sure. So actually, a lot of people don't know this about me. I am originally from Illinois, born in LA, but from Illinois, born and raised, and went to school to be a pastor. So have that in my background, and I will give you the quick down and dirty. So went to school to be a pastor, was working at a Christian university, and lost everything in '08, and found myself homeless with a master's degree in San Diego. And so thought if it could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. And when I got back on my feet, I made a commitment to start an organization to create advocacy and awareness. And so that was how I got started on this charity roller coaster. Now that was 10 years ago that we started the organization.
Wow! Congratulations on a decade. It's hard to stay afloat. And one of my previous guests on the show in the last episode, we were talking about in times like this of turmoil, it's more about survival. And I know you guys are a nonprofit, so sometimes it's even a little tougher along that path.
It's been interesting, but I always tell people that charity is not for the faint of heart, and that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you're definitely not going to get rich. So if you're going in it thinking that you can have this great tax hustle, it is hard work. So yeah, do your research before you start one.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Going back to '08, how did you find yourself homeless with a master's degree? I know that it was the financial crisis and people kind of lost their ass. Was that kind of what happened to you, where you just lost your job, or were you overextended?
No, it was actually a series of events, basically a break from my family and a break from my church, which is all that I'd ever had. So my whole security network and social network cut me off within the matter of about a month, actually weeks. And then, like I said, it was the state of the world in '08. And so to have a very specialized degree, I have a master's in divinity, and church work on my resume, when everybody's looking for work, it was really hard to find work. So what I did was I finally dumped down my resume and I got a retail job part-time, and I worked at a coffee shop making minimum wage, and that wasn't enough living in San Diego where it was at the time. That wasn't enough to live indoors, so I ended up losing my housing. Wow.
It's very unfortunate. What was it like? Take us through your experience of being homeless in San Diego. What's that experience like from firsthand?
Well, it went from couch surfing to living out of my car to having my car taken away, and just, even trying to get to and from my work, my two jobs. One was in North San Diego, North County, and the other one was downtown. And so that could take 2 to 3 hours just in transport. So that was pretty rough. So finally, when I reconciled with family, I was living with my parents, but I was taking the trolley and the trains. And so I would get up at 4 and get home at midnight every night. So it was rough.
Wow. Yeah. So you're spending a lot of your time just trying to commute anywhere that you could. That's very tough. How did you make your way over to Vegas? I know San Diego and a lot of the LA areas are kind of riddled. It's the bad word, but I know the homeless population likes to hover kind of into that area. So how did you make your way out to Vegas from that populated dense area?
I joke that we're tax refugees. So along the way, I met my husband. I was indoors. He always teases. He's like, I wouldn't have married a homeless chick, but met my husband, got married, and then he was actually doing business in Las Vegas, and so he was coming back and forth to do business, and so we actually moved out because just lower cost of living. He was here all the time. It made more sense, and at the time, Caridad was just a volunteer-based organization, so it wasn't that big a deal to step away. We were still trying to run it remotely, but then moved out here, and then later eventually moved the organization out here. But I have worked, once I finally got into homeless services, had worked in LA and San Diego County both, so familiar with those populations. But yeah, to come out here, now housing prices are starting to go up, but it used to be when I first moved, and we moved back in 2013, somebody with a fixed income could still fairly easily find affordable housing, which was great. So it was interesting for me to come from San Diego to Las Vegas, and literally it looked like I was waving a magic wand, but it was really just sitting and working with property managers that would rent to our clients. So we were able to house people really quickly, but it was just creating those relationships with property managers. And also something that I forgot, which is the main reason why I lost my job and why everything imploded. When I graduated from seminary, I had taken the job and was working in nightlife. And so I didn't let that be known because I grew up conservative Christian, and drinking is against our religion. So it would be scandalous, and it was when it finally came out, that I had been working in nightclubs, even though I wasn't at the time. But now that I'm here in Las Vegas, I have some great connections from the nightlife industry, and have been able to tap into some of those resources at the casinos and in the bar and nightlife area to help end homelessness. And so, for example, Hakkasan Group, when we do Project Homeless Connect with Nevada Homeless Alliance, they do that every year. Hakkasan now runs the security, and they donate money to that event. And that was something that nobody had ever even heard of.
I actually work at Omnia Nightclub as a busser, so I actually do work for Hakkasan Group.
That is fantastic. Well, they partner with us for big events, so that's cool. We love them.
Yeah, I'll definitely be out there. That's the nightlife industry, and it's just it's grown vastly out here in Vegas. You know, it was just going back to when you moved out here in 2013. There was maybe 3 or 4 nightclubs. Now there's dozens.
Well, I'm an old lady in nightlife years, so I worked in nightclubs from like 2003 to call it 2005. So we're all like grandpas back and see people. Like, we joke, and no offense to you, but we're like, these people can't even drive to work yet. Are they old enough? Like, that's why I feel like, wow, now.
What did you do in the nightclubs? Were you a host or a promoter?
A host. I was a host and a promoter. Yep.
So this is where you derive your hustle from, and I could see how that could kind of translate out into Caridad and helping out the homeless community. Because when you're a host, that's not a job; that's your life. You're always you're always on the clock, and you're always out there hustling, meeting people, and trying to dive a little bit deeper into people's personalities and the reasons.
Well, and ironically, on the back of our shirts when we do street outreach, our street outreach shirts on the back say homeless concierge. And so I took what I learned in the nightlife industry and that customer service approach. And so, like how a host at a casino would cut through the red tape for their client, that's what we do for our clients. So we go with them to appointments. So say they have an appointment at a social agency, say Social Security. So that might take several hours of waiting. You know, somebody that is in homelessness, they're in distress, or they've got other factors going on, they might not want to sit there. But so what we'll do is we'll go sit those 4 hours with them and hang out to make sure that they get from step A to step B with ease. Or we've got to connect. Like it used to be when we were taking people to the DMV to get their IDs. We had a day and we had a person, and we'd go with Luzon Social Services and talk to our person at our window. So it would cut down that wait time. So even building those relationships so our clients don't have to sweat it. It's not, here's a bus pass and directions and good luck. It's no, we're going to walk with you in this process out of homelessness every step of the way.
Oh, wow. That's definitely a concierge service, full blown.
That's what I always joke. I'm like, we're bringing the VIP to the streets.
So about Caridad, when you're out there on the streets, what is that experience like? Are there certain things that you look for, like specific areas that the homeless people kind of gravitate towards? Is there like different social cues? What's kind of like your the navigation method?
So initially what we were doing, and I have to give a shout out to Downtown Project, because I used to work for Downtown Project doing my street outreach when I first came here. I was the first and the only ever for-profit company that hired a homeless services worker to do homeless services under their watch, which was wonderful. I miss those days of not having to panhandle for my budget. But so what we would do, and what makes us different, because there are lots of outreach agencies in the Valley. And right now I tell people our street outreach is on pause. We're trying to get funding again to restart it. But what we would do and what made us different is it's a small defined footprint. So we have, for example, say the downtown area, and I'm using DTP companies as an example. They have 16 blocks of downtown they own. So that team would cover those 16 blocks daily. When we used to have a contract for the city of Las Vegas or the Fremont Street Experience, those were separate teams. So as we got separate contracts, traditionally what agencies would do is that would be the same team covering those wider areas. So what we are seeing, or what we were seeing when we were doing our full-time outreach, is we had separate teams for the different areas. It kept our costs low, and we partnered with the bicycle transit company here locally, Bicycle Transit Systems, that do the rideshare bikes, to where we have rental bikes. So if we have to go somewhere quickly within our footprint, we can hop on a bike and get from one end to the other. But what it creates is it's like a beat cop. So we are creating those relationships in the community, not only with the owners of the properties, but also with the homeless. So we saw results because somebody that is mentally ill, if they see you, they might not be on their meds, but they will start to recognize you. If you're walking by them 7 times a day, 7 days a week, they're going to start to recognize you. And I consider even a hello a victory. So what I train the team to do is go out, what do you need, talk to them. And oftentimes in that first encounter, they're going to give you a laundry list of things that they need, when really it's how do we get you stably indoors. Or it might be something as simple as an ID. So training them, every conversation should be about housing, but then also looking at little milestones. I call it baby steps of what people can be working on. So that way they're engaged in their case plan, and it gives them motivation. And then we have a program, it's called Slurpees for Success. So they come up with those goals. They create what they want to work on their little goal sheet, and then each time they obtain it, we take them out for a Slurpee. It sounds silly, but it works.
It's dealing with people who don't necessarily have a home. They end up in those positions for a whole plethora of reasons, right? Like I've used this example before. I used to own an antique store by UNLV, and it was off of Spencer and Tropicana area. And there's kind of a bigger homeless community out there. And so a bunch of them, they would always hang out in front of our store because we had chairs out there, and, they're pretty friendly. And we'd invite them in, we'd give them water. And one of the guys, his name was Frank, he ended up being like a pseudo employee for us. And we ended up getting him off the streets, and now he has like a full job in Chicago. But his reason was that he ended up in a divorce, and he just like lost all his assets, and he didn't know what to do. And then he developed a drinking habit, and he like couldn't pull himself out of kind of the depression. But literally just sitting and talking to him, and he ended up, just like we said, helping us with the store. He built the courage and kind of reset and primed his mind to get back to where he was. And just talking to him, he had a very successful life beforehand. He worked in the financial markets, had a bunch of money. But when he was out on the streets and a little bit dirty, people kind of presume that you've been in that position your entire life. So yeah, it's tough.
I always tell people we forget sometimes because we, just discard homeless or dismiss them. And we forget they had a story. They have a backstory. They have a family. They had a job. They had a life. All these things before they became homeless. There's a gentleman that comes to mind. His name is David. And he was incontinent. He'd had multiple heart attacks, had to use a walker to walk, just shook, but was a raging alcoholic. And we tried to get anything done, and he literally had to have a beer, otherwise he'd have a seizure. And tried to get him multiple times into detox. And I remember he used to sit across the street. There's a gas station across from Zappos. I won't say their name, but he would sit there and drink and panhandle. And he was supposed to be in rehab, and I saw him, and I literally cut across that busy street right there at Las Vegas Boulevard and Stewart, and was yelling, came at him, and I said, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be a detox." And this other guy next to us was like, "Why aren't you talking to me?" And I said, "You said you don't want to be a client." He said, "I don't want to be your client." I said, "All right, then this doesn't involve you." And I shook my finger in his face, and I said, "He knows why I'm shaking my finger at him." He said, "Don't you?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "You know what you did?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you want my help or don't you?" He said, "I want your help." I said, "Well, then," I go, "I'm here to help you." And I go, "And we're going to try this again on Monday." And I go, "And I'll forgive you if you show up on Monday and you meet me here at 7. He said, "Okay." So he met me, and we went from there. And then even the day that we got him into detox, I realized with him, hey, if we get him earlier in the morning, he doesn't need that drink because his body's just waking up. We could do this. So we arranged, and we met him at 4 a.m. We put trash bags down in the back of the car because, again, he's incontinent. Met him, had to help him because he was so feeble, getting him out of his encampment, put him in the back seat. He smelled horrible. Get him in the detox. And over the weekend, it was up and down whether or not he was going to be in the housing program. He kept calling, crying. I still have that message saved to this day of he's like, "You got to help me. You got to help me. I'm going to die." Then I had to pull my director card, worked with the director to get him into a housing program. And I got the call. Again, I saved this message. I saved the message saying he wasn't going to make it. He was going to die. And then I saved the message of him calling me to thank me that Monday. And he said, "We did it. We're in." He said, "You saved my life." He said, "I'm going to live. Thank you." That was 4 years ago. He moved into a house. He got his retirement. He had 2 master's degrees, reconciled with his family, used to be a hiking instructor. Once he got sober, all the problems cleared up. He goes hiking now. I always joke he moved into a house around the corner from me, had a better house than me with a nice pool. We've become friends, and he now is a sponsor and a mentor at AA. So just awesome to see him because literally everybody had discarded him, walked by him, and would have probably dismissed him.
Yeah, that's such a fulfilling story to hear. When you go out and you approach homeless people, do you have more of a positive response or a negative response? Are they usually want help, or do you kind of have to like beat it into them a little bit, so to speak?
I always tell people nobody wants to be homeless. I've worked in 3 major cities.
Mm-hmm.
My entire experience of interviewing thousands of homeless men, anybody that wants to be homeless and doesn't want help. But what I do tell people is humans will take the path of least resistance. So what are we doing as a society that their best option is to be outside? And a lot of it involves the programming or the hoops that they have to go through, that they say, "Forget it, it's not worth it, this is too hard, I give up." And so it's meeting them where they're at. And so back to the delivery and the concierge approach, like we don't force sobriety on our people. We don't make them make choices. We offer solutions and try to help guide them to make what's best for their particular case. And I think that's the difference. They feel like they are in control and they are making the choices that they want. And so it's empowering them.
Huh. Yeah, I guess that makes sense because humans we're just irrational. So we kind of want to fight off anything. We like to hold and internalize our issues, even though we do necessarily need help. That's why things like therapy were so outlandish for such a long time. And now they're starting to become a little bit more popular in the mainstream because people understand that we need a third party to help us sometimes, and not just our friends and family can't be the only ones.
I was just sharing this story. We had a person that was a screamer, a naked screamer. So nobody wanted to help them. All right, you want to scream. Can you do it with pants on? And can you do it during business hours, 8 to 5? All right. Well, they made that. Let's try that for a week. Okay, now you did 2 weeks. Okay, now let's try to not do it on the weekends. Okay, now can you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday? All right, and then we weaned them off. So it was, all right, cool. You want to scream? Let's work with you. To where they quit being the naked screamer.
Yeah, that's definitely a title that you don't want unless maybe you're at maybe unless you're at like Burning Man or something like that.
Yeah. Wrong party.
That makes sense. So that's a point of view that I didn't even think about. You use the term weaning off. Usually when you use that, that's associated with with drugs and substances. But sometimes you have to wean them off these bad habits and recognize it because, they've been maybe the naked screamer for such a long time that's just in tune with their personality, and they don't even realize that it's not something that society wants to see at points in time.
Or even lowering as a service provider, and I work with this all the time on the team, realizing our biases and lowering our expectations of others that are adults. For example, we had a gentleman that had zero income that was housed, and I'm getting calls because we, again, are on the streets. We don't do the housing. And so it's funny, everybody always jokes, they fall apart when they go inside. We haven't doing so great for us, but I think it's those constant check-ins and that kind of, they feel like they're in relationship and being cared for through the customer service approach. But so we had a gentleman, zero income, in housing. They're mad. He's got money. And then lo and behold, they find out he's running drugs and prostitutes out of his space. And what do? They come to me. We want to kick him out. What's going on? I said, he's got a micro enterprise going. That's fantastic. He's a business owner. Let's teach him how to do something that doesn't get him put in jail. And so it was that just changing the perspective of like, wow, congratulations, you've got a business owner living with you.
I like that perspective because homeless people, they will find any way to survive. That's just the basic primal human instinct. And something that you see a lot is the panhandling aspect of it, which, sometimes it gets a bad flack because some people will take advantage of it. And if they're not homeless, just go out there and make, $30 or $40 an hour. I remember that was in the news when I was younger, that an average panhandler makes, I think it was like $35 an hour. I don't know
that is a misperception. That is actually, it's rough. Like they're lucky on a good day. Most panhandlers will make $30 a day.
Really?
It just depends on the location. But a lot of what you see is people, there will be panhandlers out. Not every panhandler is homeless, and I'm actually okay with that. Some of them are indoors and they have a fixed income. So you'll see an uptick, especially at the end of the month, where they need money for meds or money for food, because depending on how much you make, you may or may not get food stamps. But if you have over a certain income, you might get $10 to $14 of food stamps. If all your money is going towards housing, how are you, or maybe, a bus pass to get around, how are you to do anything else? And so sometimes panhandling will be to supplement that. So what we tried to do when we had our contract with the Fremont Street Experience is work with the panhandlers out there to figure out why are they out here, what are they trying to raise money for, and then connect them to resources to wean them back to the weaning them off of it, weaning them off panhandling. Hey, would you have to come out here if we get you X, Y, and Z? And so to try to work on that with them.
That's good, because I know there can be some sort of like territory warfare with corners too. I've talked to a few homeless
Yes.
people that have told me a little bit of the in-depth behind the scenes on corner territories, and I've seen the homeless people actually argue over it too, because
a good spot is hard to come by.
Yep. Yeah, it's like I said, the homeless community, it's getting bigger, and it's being exacerbated by what's happening, especially now, where it's the deterioration of the middle class. And so then the lower class kind of has to fight for this finite amount of jobs. And so you have to get creative with job creation. And I know something that you guys have been doing, and it's kind of been the staple of your program, is Caridad Gardens. Which is something that I've seen, and it's been almost a bridge for some of the homeless people to find something more sustainable and get them in between finding a permanent residence and getting off the streets. Can you tell us a little bit about the gardens and that situation?
Sure. So back to DTP. I feel like my Las Vegas story has DTP interwoven in it. And for people that don't know, DTP is formerly Downtown Project. People sometimes say it's Zappos. It actually isn't Zappos. So Zappos got acquired by Amazon, and then the two heads of Zappos took $360 million of their own money from the sale of that purchase and invested into downtown. They bought 16 blocks and created small businesses in this fund. Now that money, the initial investment is gone, but now DTP Holdings, they have 16 blocks and they're working on community in downtown and even investing in developing their current businesses. So they bought a hydroponic farm. It's an indoor shipping container. They had tried to operate it with volunteers unsuccessfully, and it had been sitting empty. And so they approached us and said, hey, would you want to take this over and make this a homeless jobs program? And so we did the numbers, we crunched the numbers. I got people's produce invoices. I asked the downtown businesses, what do you need? And people kept saying mint. And so we got produce invoices for Mint, and we figured if we only took 5% of the Mint sales in downtown, that would be enough to cover the cost of the farm staffing, the programming, and all the incidentals. So that's why we decided to do it. We reached out to our partners in homeless services, and US Vets said, absolutely, we want to do that with you. They guaranteed our people would be stably housed while they were working for us, which is fantastic. So that's how we came upon Vets. And I joke, veterans, community gardens, and sustainable communities. The only thing better we could do is if we could give out free puppies, which we're actually doing, not free, but we're going to start doing something. I'll get into that in a minute. But we actually are partnering up with an agency to do dog rescue with puppies. So it's coming.
That's how you win people over as puppies. UNLV used to do a puppy day right before finals because it's one of the best ways to assist with anxiety and holding a puppy.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about that. But so we started this adventure, and we started out, we were thinking we would have people work with us in the farm, but then the DT Alley, which is behind 6th and Carson, or for people that know the donut bar space, it's that alley back there. It was a nasty alley that was really just disgusting, and that's people shooting up and whatever. But so they got the city and the businesses to agree to shut down the alley to traffic. And so now it's just pedestrian friendly. There's murals and really great art installations and interactive things out there. And they hired the garden staff to maintain the alley. So we do the trash, we do graffiti removal, we just keep it nice out there. And then they have these giant planters to block off the traffic. And so what we started is our remote gardener program. So our remote gardeners have a planter bin at their house. They get paid $50 a week stipend. We picked that amount because if anybody has fixed income, that won't be enough to affect their amount, and their amount won't get lowered. So they can make extra money. It's a meaningful amount that helps them out, but it doesn't hurt their overall monthly income. So the remote gardeners start things from seedlings, and they do things that we can't necessarily grow in the garden since it's a vertical farm. And they also start our flowers for the alley. So they start that at their home. And then people that are higher functioning work in the alley since they are dealing with the public. And so, for example, we had someone that was heavily into meth, and that's fine if he wants to do that on his spare time, but he was showing up to the alley, and we're like, hey, we can't have you around people. Let's try again. Come back in 2 days when you sober up. Well, he was doing so much that it just wasn't working. So, so he got put back to a planter bin. So I always tell the team, we want to make it really hard for people to get fired or to get exited from our program. So he's back to a planter bin, but now he's been doing really great again. And so we said, let's try you out. So this coming months, fall months, we're going to start some outdoor activities and hosting events in the alley. And so he's going to be part of our event staff. If he does well, we told him, hey, we'll see how it does. We can bring you back if that works out. So like I said, we make it really, really hard for people to get fired. But we also have a social worker on our staff that works with their case manager. So with him, hey, what's going on? What's the switch in behavior? How can we help you? It was never, you need to get sober or else. It was, hey, what's going on? How can we help and support you? And our head gardener is also a certified personal trainer. She's gone to school for some nursing classes. And so she is all about holistic healing. And so she has one day a week where she works with people. She also does a really cool thing called Heart Math, which is about meditation. And so one of our guys is suffering right now with PTSD pretty badly because his particular case manager on quarantine. So every week it's a new case manager at his property. So he realizes that. And so she's working with him to teach him these meditation principles to kind of help calm him down. And then even we've got one of our vets that has degenerative arthritis. So she's working with her to get her on some produce that will help decrease the inflammation in her back from the farm. So holistic therapy, and you wouldn't get that at another job. If you're leaving on your break to go do meth, you're probably going to get fired at another job. But here we say, no, what's going on? Let's help you. So it's a very holistic approach, but it's what they need. And it's really been great to see people thrive. We just had our first, because we only hired our first veterans mid-February. So it's we had our first guy get hired out to a full-time job. And so we had a whole little ceremony. He got a trophy. And so it's cool. We celebrate that. But we also realize that some of our people in our programming might never graduate out, and that's okay too. That's why we designed this programming. And I'm working, cross your fingers, if we get more funding, I want to purchase some more shipping containers and do these. Actually, this is my pie in the sky dream. Do them with some shelter partners. So this will be like an option for their residential clients, because we've just seen, man, it's just amazing just having the planter. What a difference it makes in people's lives to have something to care for and to do.
Yeah, everyone always needs to find something that's larger than themselves. That's why they end up being, or part of the reason why they end up being homeless, because they're just singled out and they don't know, like, that you almost lose your sense of purpose in life. And that's the grand question of life is, what is my purpose? But when you guys come in and you help them and you tell them to, or assist them in getting off the street and caring for a garden and seeing the whole project grow itself, and you have big dreams, like you said, that they get to be a part of that. That's it's something that's beautiful, and they definitely resonate with it as well.
When we've got another program that's going at the same time that's a part of the garden that is with our partners at Anthem Medicaid. And so if anyone listening lives within a 2-mile radius of the bunkhouse and 11th Street Records, you qualify for this and you need to look us up. But it's free produce every week. You get a free bag, no questions asked. It's voluntary. You sign up for our text blasts. And so Anthem members get a free bag of produce. On our end, we track them and help them out with whatever resources they might need. On the Anthem end, they're tracking health outcomes. So what their goal over this next year is they're hoping they can show the correlation between health outcomes improving and the introduction of free produce. And why we picked within a 2-mile radius of the farm is that downtown core right there is a mostly walking lower income area. And within that, it's a food desert. So people don't have access to fresh produce. So this is actually introducing fresh produce to them. And also in their free produce bags that they get, we have recipe ideas, because we realize some of this stuff might be new to people that they've never seen in their lives. So it's got the nutrition facts and everything about it, how to care for it, and then also some suggestions of what to do with them in dishes.
Wow. Yeah, I actually live right in that area. I live in the art district, and I live on Colorado and Casino Center at the new Share Downtown building. But I'm actually amazed that there's no fresh market in this area. I have to drive, a few miles down the road to find something.
Pretty bad.
And so you feel even more for the people who, don't have a car, because there's literally nothing there. You kind of have to resort to eating out of 7-Eleven and these convenience stores. And we all know how 7-Eleven hot dogs end.
Yeah, not good. Or if you're lucky, some of them you'll get a rotten lime once in a while.
As far as we'll go back to the homeless community, with the temperature of Vegas, being 113, 114, 115. Is that one of the primary care for homeless people to get them out of the sun and out of like the heat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we have actually within Clark County, we have cooling stations. The county puts out that info and we try to share it on our social media as well. But there are partnering businesses and locations that have air and water for people if they can just make it to that space. And it's literally all around the valley that we have these cooling stations that are activated. But as crazy as it sounds, I love the heat. And I like when it's incredibly hot because people are more willing to take the help. And so as crazy as that sounds, I live for the hot days because you just walk up and you say, hey, do you? And they're like, yes.
It's a selfish, selfless act.
So it's great. And so we obviously adjust our hours based on the heat. So we'll start earlier. I mean, because I'm not going to try to kill my client or my team, you know, push them. But me, I'm nuts. I'll go out at noon or 1 or whatever and go talk to people. I love it.
I'm the same. I'm a desert rat. All my friends that work in the nightclub, not many of them are from Vegas. And I'm like, you know, I prefer when it's over 100 than when it's cold. Anything under 70 degrees and I'm absolutely freezing my ass off.
That's so funny. That's me too. And I ride my bike. Once it's over 80, I just ride my bike everywhere. So, yeah.
Interesting. So also as far as products for the homeless community, what would you say are we'll just say like the top 3 most requested donation items towards like the community?
It's interesting that you ask because the top, water obviously, but the other 2 is really why I started the organization. Aside from advocacy, is socks and underwear, and new socks and underwear, all sizes from infant on up to like 3X, and a 4th, feminine hygiene products. I added one in there on here, but they never get donated. And so we actually started our first event we did was Undies Sunday, and it's a sock and underwear drive. We still, pre-COVID, do it every year the Sunday after Easter. And it's our silly little way of doing donations. Everything about our organization is kind of whimsical because that's just my personality. So we have Mighty Tidy, our superhero that saves the world from bad sock and underwear donations. And we create fun video content to promote it. And we do a big old sock and underwear drive that we give to our shelter and outreach partners. And this year we're trying to figure out what we're going to do because Hanes is a sponsor for us and they gave us socks and masks. So we're trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Our partner at Caesars Foundation want to volunteer and do a day. So we're just trying to coordinate that to where we do a donation drive, and we're thinking COVID care kits as well.
Yeah, that's
we're going to change it up to this year. So it'll be masks, sanitizer, socks, water.
Yeah, the COVID care pack is it's almost ambiguous because you need masks and sanitizer, but there's still so much question that surrounds the entire virus, and the governments are still trying to figure it out as well. I know you've been a little vocal about it. I read your poetic essay, we'll call it that was on your website. Can you just tell us a little bit of your opinions surrounding that and how it's affected the homeless community?
Well, it's not popular, and I do work directly with politicians. I used to be a federal lead for our community on ending veterans homelessness. So I literally work with everyone from the feds on down at the government level. And so it's a tricky dance, but I always tell people you have to be careful because you never want to burn a bridge that you're going to have to cross eventually. But what I will say in my time and 10 years of doing homeless service is that I see, unfortunately, government is often ineffective at carrying things out. So we got a big buzz about our parking lot stripes, and then we created a hospital tent, and that was a collaboration with the state and the county and the city. And we helped 19 cases. They had, I'm bad with the numbers of how many they finally got up to, but what was happening was people were realizing as homeless, oh wait, if I say I've got this cough and a fever, I can lay all day in this air-conditioned space and I'm away from people. And then they were like, wait a minute, that's not what they created this for. So it's sad, but they spent over $11 million, basically when you break it down, to help 19 people. Now, what we could have done with that, we know based on a UNLV study that on average it costs about $20,000 to $24,000 a year to house somebody with case management. So quite literally, we could have housed our entire homeless population for several years with the cost that we
Oh
spent
my
on the homeless
God.
tent to help the hospital tent to help 19 COVID patients. So back to, I want to trust the government, but I see how ineffective they can be. And it was a beautiful, beautiful tent and a beautiful facility. So I mean, it was one of the top ones in the country. But was that the most effective use of the money? No, we still have homeless, and it's not as effective. I think the communities that have done it well have been where it's the private-public partnership, and I feel like that's where we're really lacking as a community. And I'm honestly a little bit freaked out at the current state of the world and evictions, because as a state, we don't have prevention dollars, meaning that if someone gets into trouble or is about to get evicted, there's nothing to help them. Now, there are some COVID assistance funding that has come through the pipeline and it is going to be used, but that might take a while. And there are some now that are helping, but at what capacity can they help? Because I feel like we are going to get numbers that we've never seen. And I'm thoroughly freaked out that our system can't handle what we've got. And to put more into that system that we currently can't help, it has got me a little bit worried.
It's yeah, the eviction crisis and just kind of the government, the federal government, they've been at a standstill, you know, with printing money and the eviction moratorium. I've seen articles of them saying there could be like a few 100,000 evictions. I've talked to a few people where they said it's in the tens of thousands, but still, even to flood the streets and to put people out literally out in the streets, it's not something that's going to be good, especially with just kind of the inadequate, how do I say this, just how the government, like you said, they kind of just spend money at will, and they see it probably more as a way of like, oh, we have to spend this money anyway, so we're just going to create whatever, and the efficacy of it maybe isn't so important.
It's interesting. I've been talking to friends that are in favor of defunding the police um, to fund social programming, and I've been educating them about existing social programming. And people don't realize there are a lot of social programming in the place, even in Nevada, um, but people don't know. And what is your money going to as a taxpayer? They don't know. And even scarier is they don't know how to access those services. Um, so it's I think it would be good, and I challenge people listening, educate yourself, know what programming we have, learn about the current supportive agencies that are already in existence, and support them, whether it be volunteer hours, doing like a donation drive, whatever you can do is going to be helpful, because all of us are already starting to feel it. Like, we are already starting to get those phone calls, and it's in Nevada and even across the country, majority of the homeless are not who you think. It's families and it's youth. And in Nevada, we have the largest population of unaccompanied youth. So 18 and under, and youth with families. So 18 and under with multiple children. And that's not who you think of when you think of homelessness, but that's who we have. And that homeless family sector is growing, especially now with everything because of quarantine and COVID. So yeah, just educate yourself what's going, but also talk to lawmakers. A lot of this federal funding that we currently have for ending homelessness, they demand that you house so many people. So it's, I call it the bean counter, but they don't demand that they stay in. So what's happening is the natural tendency is to churn, because they've got to make those numbers, they've got to get it up. So people are going in and out of housing, and we're putting these people into housing, but that isn't necessarily a good thing. That means that somebody got kicked out to get that housing spot. So also talking to lawmakers and saying, hey, why is it like this? Why aren't we demanding results? You're not getting what you paid for. If 5 agencies are counting the same person as being housed in their year on their numbers for their funding, that's the same guy that just got kicked out and went in and out of the streets. So that's probably not the most effective use of the money.
What would you say is the most effective way to lobby, our local official lawmakers? Is it something as simple as just calling them up and spreading concern? Can you send an email, or is it more so talking to, let's say, like you or heads of different organizations, and they go in a more representative manner?
I would say go to your representatives, local, state, federal, talk to them. Even at the federal level, they all have offices here. They have people that their job is to work with you on the ground. Talk to them, ask, say, hey, what is going on? Look at the numbers too. Like when you're looking at those numbers of the breakdown, like they might have encounters, but are they repeat encounters? So like one agency might say, hey, we had 1,000 people that we helped this month. Well, that might be 50 people that they saw, multiple times. So also get an explanation. Hey, what does this number mean? Because I know we found that our cost, because of our methodology, and I don't think we're the end all be all, it's just different apples to oranges. We were seeing the same as some of the bigger agencies because our methodology was different. So they were seeing 300 people, we're seeing 300 people, but it's a smaller territory. And we're actually seeing, when you look at the individual encounters, it was more people that we were helping. Not bad, just different methodology. So also ask, hey, what does this number mean? What do you mean by that? Just ask, get those reports. Ask, what is this? What are we doing? What is this number? Because it's a lot of jargon. I call it alphabet soup. We like to throw on things that doesn't mean anything to the general public, but just even asking those questions lets lawmakers know, hey, this is a priority, they're looking at it, and that helps also elevate the priority.
Yeah, I think social pressures is probably the best way or most effective for now, and for leaders in a groupthink, because right now everyone's kind of at a standstill, and it's become more of, seems like, a proudness of political power and showmanship than it is actually getting things done. So,
yes.
yeah.
And it's also hard, and I put myself in this category. My husband, he is a business guy, and he jokes that he never did anything nice or kind for anybody a day in his life until he met me. And he still could care less. Like he's a great guy, but he doesn't care about my clients and their stories. But it's been good for me to tailor my approach, because how do you reach somebody like that no matter how many sob stories I tell him, he's gonna be like, well, that guy's still, killing my business because he's going to the bathroom on my stoop every morning. So it's how do you tailor that? And I feel like we as providers haven't done a good job of changing our messaging for people like that, for the businesses. So I feel like there has become in Las Vegas this greater divide of an us and them, homeless service providers and the businesses, because we're speaking different language, versus if you give them a cost breakdown and say, hey, this is costing you this much to clean up, this is costing you X, Y, and Z. And if we do this, it'll cost you less. You're still paying, but it'll be far less, and it'll help your business. So it's tailoring the message to your audience.
Yes, yeah, you have to speak in accountant terms to private business owners.
Yeah, I hate numbers, but yeah, talking numbers and cents. And it changes their messaging too, because what happens is they perceive it as nothing is being done, because as service providers, we're often locked in a room or just, so busy head down doing our work. They don't know anything's being done. They don't know about collaborative initiatives and what the community is doing that's great. So they just think nothing. So they're calling their council members saying, hey, do something, do something, do something. So then I always say, with the city and the police, what do you have if you only have a hammer in your tool belt? Everything looks like a nail. And so for them, it's going to be this knee-jerk enforcement reaction, because that's what they've got. Those are their resources. That's not what we want. So this is where we need private businesses and the homeless services providers and the lawmakers to come together and say, hey, this housing thing, we're going to work on this together.
Yeah, I think the partnership with the private and public sectors and the government organizations is key. Are you guys classified as a private charity, or are you a public nonprofit?
Well, there are no public nonprofits. We're a 501c3.
Okay.
So yeah, we are a nonprofit. Yes, nonprofits. Yes. If anybody out there is thinking of starting a nonprofit, don't do it.
Let me rephrase this. What would you say is the hardest part about running a 501c3 that you didn't expect?
I think the funding, for sure. It was much easier when we were a volunteer organization, just doing donations. But to go to the next level right now, we've got 18 people on our team. We're getting ready to hire 3 more. It's a lot of responsibility, but also doing it the right way. In Nevada, you have to have a charitable solicitation status or a document from the state to even be able to ask things. So I also tell people it's really hard. Make sure you do your research so you have your paperwork and your things in order. That will set you up, even accounting. It will set you up to get better donations, better partnerships, and back to transparency. I'm all about transparency. So we share, we've gotten away from it since we are not doing street outreach, but we used to share our monthly reports, including the cost breakdown per client. But I think that's important for donors to gain their trust and back to the businesses. These are people that aren't coming from a homeless services background. So anything that you can do to ease their mind to show them that you're being transparent and doing what you say with your money is a good thing.
It's right back online of speaking their language with the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
something that I noticed on your website too. If you go all the way down to the bottom, it has you guys' annual reports on there for complete transparency, and that's very, very key. And I know before we get out of here, I always ask 2 questions at the end, but I have one bigger question that we didn't get to touch. From your opinion, do you see the homelessness, quote unquote, crisis in Las Vegas specifically getting better, getting worse, or is it kind of neutral at a standstill?
I'm freaked out. I think it's going to get a lot worse. I think it's unfortunately going to look like the zombie apocalypse, and that's because of several things that are in play. There are some powers that be, and I'm not going to touch nothing about the current administration because that's a whole nother podcast that people are very divided on. So I don't even want to go there because I still have to work with them at the end of the day. But what they have done is 2 people that are instrumental in touching the funds and the policies and what we do as communities have been put in place that don't come from a homeless services background, that don't have the buy-in that people need help and might need a hand out. They have the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, and they are talking cutting some of our housing funding. And the gentleman that is actually over U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness Usage, so he's our policy person, comes from that background of you should make people uncomfortable, shelters should look like jail. He was a consultant for many communities on their models, and he has 0 success. And in some communities where his models have been implemented, their street homelessness have actually gone up because it hasn't created housing. It's created these kind of courtyard model. So that freaks me out, knowing that that's coming through the pipeline. But again, this goes back to most people don't know that. So demand answers. You are paying for this as taxpayers. This is what you're doing. This is actually, this was pre-COVID that these people were in place. So these are people that have the mentality that suck it up, get a job, you're lazy, and don't understand the inner workings of the homeless community. Homeless families are, in some cases, 2 working parents, so to punish them, that's not fair. They're doing everything, and quarantine or restrictions happen and they lost their business or whatever. It could be anybody. And so, start having those conversations, start talking to your lawmakers, say, hey, why is this? Why is this going on? And I hope I'm wrong, but unfortunately I've been right before in cases predicting the future. But to know that they're in place and we're going through this economic crisis, I'm afraid.
Well, I hope people out there are willing to, donate any resource they have, time, effort, money, whatever the case is. We're all in this together, because a city that's filled with, fear mongering and it becomes a reality. It's not a good economy or a place worth living long while.
And I think Las Vegas gets a bad rep, because of our branding, what happens in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But the community itself, we're not like that. We're a community. It's real town. I feel like it's more Midwest type values where we look out for each other. We definitely take care of our own. And so I think we can figure it out. I really am hopeful. I see how we came together for Route 91. This is a crisis, thank goodness it's not as devastating as that, but we proved that we can come together, and we have before in other times. So I think it's something where we can step up and we can come together as a community to help our neighbors.
Yeah, the hashtag Vegas Strong, that just encapsulates this small big town vibe, and that everyone's like really loves the city who ends up making it their home. And I've even interviewed people that don't live in Vegas and they call Vegas their home because of the sense of camaraderie of the people who actually do make Las Vegas what it is, and not just necessarily the what's. So before,
I
go
love
ahead.
it. I was
Yeah.
gonna say I love it here. I'm never leaving. As much as some politicians probably wish I would shut up and leave, I still love it. I still love them. I'm glad.
So I think this will be a good segment towards the end. And before I ask these two questions, I'm going to tell you that I'm actually dumbfounded by how well your multitasking skills levels are. You had a completely engaged conversation through that full drive, and now that she's parked now, but I can tell that that translates very well into your businesses and your life. So I just want to say that you're a very skilled woman to begin with. So first question is, the year is 2030. What does the ecosystem of Caridad look like?
Well, I would love it if there weren't homeless, but would love to do a community of housing, so low barriers. I tell everybody I want to build the Disneyland of homeless services. So tiny homes, but just like really great to where people want to come and see the property. It's not the leper colony. And then more gardens. I've been very clear with our partners at Anthem. We want to replicate this. And we want to be the educators, because I also believe in not duplicating. I want to teach others in homeless services sector how to do what we're doing. I love what we're doing. I want to keep it centralized. I want to keep our team focused, but I want to train others. So my vision is to let's put more homeless to work, get more healthy communities. We're giving out that great produce within their footprint, and help everybody, give jobs and produce. And then we'll all sing Kumbaya and hold hands.
I love that kumbaya. Kumbaya. You're gonna have the tiny home Disneyland, which is gonna be right in the backyard of adult Disneyland, which is the Strip. So
yeah, let's make it. I keep looking, and they think I'm nuts. I keep looking at plans of the original town. I've been looking at the old Mormon fort. I'm like, how do we make this like a cool old West town?
I really enjoy that. Last question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Oh man, I mean, it's home. It's home, and I feel like it's kind of been my rebirth. For me, I went through a lot of loss, lost my best friend, but then people that didn't even know her. She's from San Diego, but she had connections here. So to be supported by that, and then my neighbors even, it's that community, and I just love all the people here. I love how different everybody is, and I love that we live in a town where I can go pump gas and Elvis is at the gas company next to me, and that's okay. And I have sex workers that just are ride or die for me, and vice versa. And I'm like, I love that, and this is my community, and I love how diverse it is. And so the people, the community, I just love everybody, even the people that are cranky with me sometimes. If I wouldn't get punched in the face, I'd hug him.
It is literally the complete melting pot of diversity. UNLV is always rated as one of the most diverse colleges. The Strip encapsulates it well. And even out in the suburbs, I had a guest on that said that he loves Vegas because his next door neighbor, is like a hedge fund trader. And then it's like somebody who's working for a charity next door to them. And then it's just like a regular person who's working a 9-to-5 job, and maybe it's somebody who's doing some sort of content creation next to him. There's no real super segregated areas. I mean, there's a few, but it is a giant melting pot. So
it's like I'm in line with, there's Carrot Top and some guy that just got off work at the casino. It's like this is my community.
We're a strange one. How can everyone reach out to you and get involved with Caridad?
So you can check us out on our website. It's Caridad, CARIDAD, and then the word charity.com. Or we are on social media. We are Caridad Cares with the word cares at the end on Twitter. And then it's Caridad LV, so CARIDAD LV on Facebook and Instagram. And we've started also Friday Conversations if you want to tune in. We talk to We do Instagram Live, and we talk to advocates and current and formerly homeless on there. And we literally just started that, and I'm really excited about some of the people that are coming up to us and wanting to be on that. So not at your level of podcast, mind you. It's a conversation. I am definitely by no means an interviewer, but it's just been kind of fun to just sit and have a conversation with people.
It is, especially once you get past that 30 or 40-minute mark, when people really, truly open up and feel comfortable. That's where you could find the really, really great content and information into people's souls.
And you are a wonderful interviewer too, by the way, Jake. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's something that I've been trying to do for a long time. And now with COVID going on, I just really want to connect Vegas. I'm a born and raised local out here. And I think that everyone should be discovered because, like you said, it is such a diverse town and there's so many different things going on that we can all unify together and create some big collective conscious of Vegas. So thank you.
It's funny. I moved here, and I will tell you this. This is, sorry, my husband always says I have one more thing. So I'll try to make it quick. So I am, a woman of faith, and but I like to have my adult beverages. So I don't get it twisted. But so I woke up on January 1st, 2014, and had this vision of what I wanted to do, and it was to bring the charity here and kind of this game plan of the street outreach and housing. And so just couldn't get out of my mind, wrote it down. And my friend, the one that passed, called me. She was staying with somebody downtown. I want you to meet my friend. And I said, this is 8 a.m, New Year's Day. And I said, talking her ear off, I said, let me tell you about this plan for the city. And she introduced me to him. And for those of you who know who he is, it's Tony Shea. And he's pretty quiet. So this is 8:30 in the morning on New Year's Day that I am in this man's kitchen and just rattling off, hey, God gave me this vision for Las Vegas. And he blinked and kind of backed up for me. And he said, are you drunk? And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, are you high? I said, no. And he said, could you write this up in a business plan? And I said, absolutely. And so we did that, and it's been off to the races. And literally that has been the blueprint for what we've done here. So I am just forever thankful. People complain about the desert, but this has just been such a gift for me to be here working in this valley.
Living a dream and a go-getter, to say the least. Thank you for coming on. I know I'll be more excited to come down to the gardens at some point, and I know we'll end up doing this conversation again in the future. So I'm excited for that.
Hit me up. Let's do a tour. I want to show you the alley and the garden and give you some produce.
I would love to, right down the street. So
perfect.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. You're a kindred spirit, and I love the thing that you're building, especially 10 years in. So wish you well with everything. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.